up everybody, Nate here. And if you're new to stock market investing or investing in general, you've probably figured out by now that the entire process seems a little complicated. So now you've gone onto the internet to try to make the whole process a little bit simpler. Man, if you're like me, you like simple. That's why today we're going to be breaking down the 9 top ETFs that you can start investing in today that make investing in stocks super simple. And you can get started investing in most of these funds in less than 30 seconds. ETFs help you build your wealth passively, so you finally have time to go out and do other things that you really need to get done, like finally getting your oil changed. If your oil light is on right now, you better get that fixed. But a word of warning before we get started here, I am just a random dude on the internet. Don't take my word for it. Always do your own due diligence when you invest or buy anything. These are just a few options for you to get started with ETFs, but it is by no means investing advice. Always contact a professional and do what makes the most sense for your financial plan, and never just blindly listen to random people on the internet. That would be me. Now you're probably watching this and thinking, Nate, what the heck is an ETF? Well, an ETF is an exchange traded fund that usually tracks an index or a basket of different stocks on the New York Stock Exchange. These funds are passive, so unlike a mutual fund or a lot of your retirement funds out there, there is not somebody actively sitting over that account making the decisions in that account. All of these stocks and all of the companies that are within these funds, well, they are in there and they're not usually changing, so it is passively managed, but that also means that there's a lot fewer fees associated with them. Basically how it works is you buy a share of this particular company's fund, and that fund tracks a bunch of different things on the New York Stock Exchange. So it might be something like the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, it might be a specific amount of technology stocks. It really just depends on the fund. There are funds for literally anything. You've got cryptocurrency, you've got healthcare, real estate, I mean literally anything under the sun, there is an ETF out there that tracks those companies' success. But it makes investing simple and passive because you don't actually have to go out and actively find all of the different companies that you want to invest in. You can invest in a fund like an ETF that allows you to invest in many different companies all at once and immediately diversifies your portfolio because you're investing in the tech sector or the health sector or energy, you name it. You can do all of this by buying a simple share in an ETF. And it also protects you from investing individually because if you buy, say, 10 stocks and one of them goes bankrupt, well, now you lose all of that money. But if you buy a fund that has thousands of different companies, well, your money is still secure because only one of the thousands of companies went under. Like I said at the beginning, I like simple strategies, and this is one of the simplest strategies that you can make because you literally just buy a share of this particular fund, and that's it. You can continue to invest passively for as long as you want to invest. And the fund handles everything. You don't have to continue to go out and find new companies. So without further ado, here are the 9 top ETFs that you can start investing in right now. And we start with VTI. VTI is the Vanguard Stock Market Total Investment Fund ETF. Whew, that's a mouthful. Now this fund invests in pretty much everything on the stock market. That's why it's called the Total Stock Market Index Fund ETF. And it's going to give you exposure to small cap companies, medium cap, large cap, pretty much everything in the stock market is represented here. But for the most part, it is represented by tech, healthcare, finance, and some consumer goods and services. Year to date, it's given around 6.7% in annual returns, and its expense ratio is around 0.03%. Number 2, we've got the VOO, the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF. Now, this fund is going to track very closely the fluctuations in value for the companies that are listed in the S&P 500. That is around 510 companies in the United States, and these are the largest 510 companies in terms of market cap. Its expense ratio is 0.03%, and its year-to-date returns so far are 7.25%. Next up, we've got VTWO, and this is the Russell 2000 Index ETF. Basically, this is going to track the Russell 2000 companies, so these are smaller cap stocks and smaller businesses throughout the United States. Its year-to-date returns are a little smaller at only 0.93%, and its expense ratio is a little bit higher at 0.10%. But it holds around 2,000 stocks, so you have no worries about being diversified here. Number 4 on this list is the IVV. This is the iShares Core S&P 500 Index ETF. What you're probably thinking is, well, Nate, we already invested in the S&P 500. This fund is very similar, except for it has a different asset manager. The biggest difference here is the weight that all of the stocks hold. So while it invests in the same stocks as the S&P 500 and the VOO, the weight that all of the stocks hold is a little bit different. So how much you actually own in individual companies is going to vary. Its year-to-date returns are around 7.27%, and its expense ratio is 0.03%. Number 5 is the VYM. This is the Vanguard High Yield ETF, and it basically is going to invest in a variety of different companies that typically give a high dividend yield. A dividend yield is basically something that companies will give back to their shareholders for having a successful quarter. So any extra profits that come out, well, that goes back to shareholders in a dividend. And depending on how many shares you own, the higher or lower your dividend will be. This fund invests in 444 of the top companies that have the highest dividend yields in the United States. Right now, its year-to-date returns are around -2%, which doesn't sound very good, except for because we've had a big economic slowdown, well, a lot of companies have cut their dividends. So they've reduced them or just stopped them completely in order to cut costs and try to keep their company alive. But what that means for you is you might be able to get in on some of these high dividend companies at a discount right now. Oh, and its expense ratio is around 0.06%. Number 6 is the QQQ. Now, this is one of the most popular ETFs on this list. This is the Invesco Trust Series ETF. And what this fund does is track the NASDAQ 100. So it is extremely tech heavy. The NASDAQ holds some of the most valuable non-financial companies and technical companies in the United States. Its year-to-date returns are around 5.3%, and its expense ratio is 0.2%. So a little bit higher than the rest on this list, but you also only have around 100 companies to deal with. And some of these companies have proven to go from zero to billions of dollars worth of value overnight. That means a lot of profits and bigger share values for investors. Number 7 is the SPY, or the S&P 500 ETF Trust. Again, this one is going to be very, very similar to the VOO or the IVV funds, but the weight that the stocks actually hold in the fund are going to vary, which means your return is also going to be very different. When it comes to these companies that basically have mirror funds, it really just goes by your particular preference and the lowest expense ratio. You want to pick a company that is investing your money in the best way possible that makes the most sense for you. So if one makes more sense than the other, if VOO makes more sense to you, if you feel that it's weighted a little bit better, then invest in that one, or invest in SPY or IVV. For instance, those other funds that mirror the S&P 500, well, their year-to-date returns are around 7.2%, but the SPY is only at around 3.62% for this year. So it's a little bit lower because of the weight that it has in each individual stock in the portfolio. The SPY expense ratio is also 0.09%. So again, a little bit higher than some of those other funds. And like I said before, it really just comes down to preference and which company you want to do business with. Number 8 on this list is the BITO. So this fund is one of the newest ETFs on this entire list, and this basically tracks future contracts for Bitcoin. If you want a great way to invest in Bitcoin without actually investing your money in the cryptocurrency itself, this might be one of the better ways to do it. BITO tracks what the future price of Bitcoin is going to be very closely, and it gives you some exposure to cryptocurrency. Not only that, but it has some treasury securities in the fund as well, just to kind of keep things a little diversified and keep things a little more level, because we know how crazy volatile Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies can be. But it also boasts the highest year-to-date return on this entire list at 39.9%. We have seen Bitcoin go from just under $20,000 to almost $30,000 per coin this year, which means that big growth has also led to a big growth in a lot of the ETFs, particularly BITO. Its expense ratio is around 0.95%. So again, if cryptocurrency is something you'd like to diversify into, but you're not ready to go out and buy full-on coins, this might be a way for you to kind of dip your toes into the market. And lastly, we have the DIA. Now, this is the Dow Jones Industrials ETF fund, and it is pretty much the only ETF fund out there that tracks the Dow Jones. The Dow is comprised of 31 of the largest companies in terms of stock price, whereas the S&P 500 is the largest companies in terms of market capitalization. So you are investing in the smallest amount of companies here, but you're also investing in the biggest companies in the entire United States and probably in the world. Its year-to-date returns are negative 0.77%, and again, just like the other fund I mentioned, this could be an opportunity for you to get in on this ETF at a discount, considering the entire market right now is a little bit slower than usual. Because these companies are so large, they also have a lot of upside, but again, you need to do your own due diligence and kind of figure out what makes the most sense for you, whether it's these big stock companies or smaller ones. Its expense ratio is 0.16%, so pretty low. So there you have it. Those are the 9 ETFs that you can start investing in right now completely passively, which means you just put your money in and the fund does the rest. But now ETFs are definitely not for everyone. Like I said before, while ETFs are not an active investment on your part, for some people that can be a huge con, because if a company gets kicked out of a particular ETF, well, you have no control over it. You just put your money in and the fund does all the rest. Not only that, but if a particular company is added to an ETF that you don't like and you don't want to give them your money, well, then you have no control over that. You are basically at the mercy of whatever that particular fund wants to do with your money. Not only that, but you have to watch out for expenses when it comes to ETFs. Expenses are the way that these companies make money off of your investment. The general rule of thumb here is the lower the expense ratio, the better, because even a 0.1% expense ratio can end up costing you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, depending on how much money you have in. But if you don't have a lot of time to invest in stocks and you want to keep your investing strategy simple, plan on keeping your money in these funds for a very long time, ETFs are one of the easiest ways to go. And what's even better is you can invest in pretty much all of them through basic stock market apps like Robinhood and M1 Finance. And like I said, always make sure to do your research here. There are tens of thousands of different ETFs out there, all with sort of their own pros and cons. Depending on the amount of risk you want to take on, depending on the amount of work you want to take on, ETFs may be a great route for you, or they might not be. Just make sure you have a financial plan and always talk to an advisor first. Thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do so. We are talking about all things ETFs, economy, news, finance, and education on this channel 7 days a week. And if you're ready for another video from me, I've got another one ready for you right there, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.